There are stories that defy logic. Others simply don't require an explanation. In an isolated village, surrounded by dense forests and ancient silence, a child disappeared. No trace, no screams, just gone. For days, the search was intense. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, nothing. The forest seemed to have swallowed her. But then the residents began hearing howls, always at the same time, always from the same spot in the forest, and with them strange signs began to appear. Footprints circling. Houses. Toys found in clearings. Fresh meat left near trails. What seemed like silent mourning turned into a whisper of hope. And when the child finally returned, alone, days later, alive, unharmed, a question spread like wildfire among the trees. Was she with them? If you believe that wolves follow instinct alone, this story will make you think again. Sign up now, because what comes next is not just a story, it's an echo of the pack. Of course. Here's the Act 1, the farewell, now. With a CTA, with a mental trigger of curiosity and belonging, inserted only at the end in a subtle, engaging way and consistent with the mysterious tone of the narrative. Act 1. The farewell. The village seemed smaller that morning. The sky was covered in heavy clouds, and even without wind, the leaves swayed as if touched by something. The silence was thick. Not the kind of natural silence of early morning, but a tense silence, like the moment just before a storm breaks. Every stone, every shadow, every crevice seemed to be watching. Eli was standing at the edge of the forest. His eyes stared into the void between the trees with a calm unbecoming of his 12 years. Beside him, his mother knelt, holding a small amulet made of wood and rope. The words he whispered were no ordinary prayers. They were ancient, older than the village itself, passed down by women who dreamed of wolves and heard the dead among the rustling branches. She was trembling, but she wasn't crying. Eli, on the other hand, stood still. His eyes seemed to listen. Across the clearing, 3 figures lurked. Lobos. They didn't move. They didn't advance. They didn't growl. They just waited. "It's today," she said, her eyes never leaving her son. "They've come to get what was promised." No one in the village dared to approach the scene. The previous night, the fire's flames had revealed an ancient omen. Ash rose against the wind, spiraling, and in the center of the embers appeared a symbol. The double spiral. The pack mark. In the past, when this sign appeared, a child was chosen. Not kidnapped, chosen. Eli had been the first in generations. It wasn't punishment. It was no reward. It was destiny. The mother knew this, and even as her chest silently shattered, she bowed before him. "Remember what you are," he whispered, "and what you will yet become." Eli held the amulet. It was warm even in the bitter morning chill. He fastened it around his neck, next to the wolf's tooth he had carried since his birth. A gift no one could explain at the time. It had been found in his crib. Clean. White. Perfect. The first mark of the bond. He took a step forward. The wolves watched him but didn't move. The clearing between them felt like an invisible border, a line that once crossed could never be undone. The mother did not scream. But when he crossed the border and the wolves turned toward the dense forest, she closed her eyes. It was there that, for the first time in years, the forest responded. A deep sound, somewhere between a howl and a thunder, reverberated across the hills. A call, not just for Eli, but for his blood. The village in the distance remained silent. Some residents backed away, others lit candles. The oldest ones knelt. They knew what it meant. The pack was not coming in vain. Eli didn't look back. The wolves walked around him like living shadows, one in front, one to the left, one to the right. There was no rush, no fear, acceptance only. With his feet sinking lightly, into the snow, and his eyes fixed on the darkness ahead, he disappeared into the trees. It was the last time the village saw Eli as a boy. From that point on, another journey began. Not just yours, but from the pack itself. Because when one of them walks beside the man, something awakens, something that the ancients called forest echo. And the farewell was just the beginning. If this sparked something in you, if this ancient connection between human and wild touched you, sign up now. Because the next chapter reveals what happens when the forest begins to whisper the chosen child's true name. And maybe you've heard that echo before. The forest that once seemed distant now became a new world, not because of geography, but because of silence. Eli walked among tall, ancient trees where the wind didn't touch the leaves and the birds didn't even dare sing. His every step was accompanied by 3 shadows, the wolves. They made no sound. They didn't howl or growl. They simply walked. Always. Close, but never touching. There was no trail. No apparent direction. Still, Eli felt they were going somewhere. Sometimes one of the wolves would stop, sniff the air, and start walking again. Other times, they would disappear between the trunks only to appear ahead, as if testing his will, as if wanting him to trust. Not them, but something greater. That first night, they camped beneath a moss-covered rock formation. Eli didn't light a fire. There was no need. The wolves surrounded him like silent walls, their body heat driving away the chill like an invisible barrier. He fell asleep to the sound of his own breathing, feeling less human, and more a part of the forest. The dreams began that night, confusing images, a cave lit by golden eyes, a howl that rose from the sky and echoed within his chest, and a child, not him, surrounded by shadows that moved like smoke. When he woke, the wolves were standing. They were looking north. Eli followed them. For the second day, they didn't speak. And even without words, the communication was clear. The wolves moved away when he needed to urinate, slowed down when he was breathing heavily, and at night they brought him pieces of meat, fresh, raw, and left near his pack. On the third dawn, they came to a clearing. In its center, a black stone rose like a tooth tearing through the earth. On its surface were ancient markings that didn't look like tools, curves, symbols, howls carved into the stone. As Eli approached, the wolves lay around it. No sound, no reaction, just watching. As he touched the stone, the cold shot through him like a bolt of lightning down his spine. His mind was pulled, not by words, but by sensations. There, he saw wolves running alongside men. He felt the earth pulse beneath his bare feet. He saw human eyes glow amber in the darkness. And then, silence. When he pulled back, he was panting, but not with fear, with understanding. At that moment, he knew he had not been chosen by the wolves, born to be one of them. He had been not a tamer, not a leader, something different, something old. That same night, howls rent the air like blades. They came from all directions. Echoes echoed across the mountains. And slowly, among the trees, other silhouettes began to emerge. Dozens, large, old, scarred wolves. Females with calm eyes, curious pups. A circle formed around the stone. Eli in the center. None approached, none attacked. They just stared, as if they were waiting for a gesture, and he understood. He got up. He raised the amulet to the sky, and at that moment, the howls began again, loud, vibrant, as if the entire forest were breathing with them. The silent pack now spoke, but not in human language. He spoke from the heart of the earth, and Eli began to listen. The following days had no name. Time seemed to slip like mist through Eli's fingers. The sacred glade had disappeared behind him, as had the wolves that had led him there. Only 4 remained, the same ones from the beginning, now always ahead, leading the way back. But something was different. It wasn't just the direction, it was him. Each step he took along the faded forest trails brought echoes of memories that didn't seem his own. The sounds of branches breaking like ancient voices, shadows dancing around him even when there was no wind. It was as if the forest itself recognized that he had crossed an invisible veil, as if he no longer belonged entirely to the world of men. On a moonless night, they camped near a frozen lake. In the reflection of the water, Eli saw something that made him flinch. His eyes were golden, not the pure amber of wolves, but with a deep glow, like a candle in a dark room. It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't fatigue. It was a transformation. That night, I couldn't sleep. Neither could the wolves. They formed a circle around him like guardians of an invisible right, and in silence, they waited. At dawn, the first test awaited him. A trail of blood tore through the snow. Ahead, following it was natural, instinctive, and as he did, Eli found the body of a young deer, fallen, still warm, but there were no bite wounds, no sign of an animal attack, just the still look, still with tears, as if he had offered his life. The wolves sat around the body. One of them, the oldest, looked directly at Eli and waited. He understood. He tore off a branch. He sharpened the tip. He knelt down. And with steady hands, he finished what nature had begun. He wept as he did so, not from pain, but from reverence. On the second day, they reached the Hill of Ashes. There, the sky was low and the air dense. Charred trees rose like charred fingers. In the center, a circle of black stones encircled a bonfire that had been extinguished for generations. The wolves sat in silence. Eli stepped into the circle. He sat down. He closed his eyes, and he saw. He saw men and wolves dancing around the fire. He heard drums made of hunting skins. He saw a boy being introduced to the pack, and saw the pack accept him. The boy was him, or someone who came before, or maybe both. The images faded when he opened his eyes, and there, before him, was a new amulet, a dark stone, spirally cut, attached to a strand of dried sinew. He put it around his neck without hesitation. On the third day, they reached the edge of the forest. Eli recognized the ground. It was the trail near the village where it all began. He saw the signs of the men, fresh footprints, distant sounds of cars, the smell of controlled fire and human smoke. The wolves stopped. They didn't follow him. He took a few steps. He felt the world from before trying to settle into his bones. The weight of logic, the urgency of words, the chill of disbelief. But something in him resisted. He turned around. The 4 wolves watched him. None howled, none advanced. And then they turned, one by one, and ran. They disappeared into the trees, as if they had never existed. Eli did not cry. He didn't smile. He just sat there, feeling the emptiness and the echo of what he was leaving behind. His body in the world of men. His spirit, where the wind carries the scent of the pack. He came back, but it would never be the same. The months. It had been a while since Eli returned. The boy who had left for the forest with fear in his eyes was no more. What had returned was someone the others couldn't understand, and he no longer tried to explain. In the village, they said he had gone mad. Others, more superstitious, swore he had been touched by the ancient spirits of the mountain, and there were those who simply avoided him, without knowing why. But Eli didn't care. In the silence of his room, he drew wolves, in notebooks, on pieces of wood, on the inside walls of his closet. And always, in each image, there were 5 pairs of eyes. One of them, the last, had something different. It wasn't animal, nor was it human. It was a reflection of what he had become. Sometimes he walked alone to the edge of the forest. He closed his eyes. He breathed in the cool air. He listened, not with his ears, but with his chest. And on certain days I swore I heard footsteps among the trees, heavy, silent, measured, never howls, never a call, just the presence, as if the pack still watched him from a distance, not out of necessity, but by choice. Eli knew he wasn't special. There was no magic coursing through his veins, no prophesied destiny or pre-written legend. What happened was a call, an invitation to that which men have forgotten, the language that is not spoken, the one that lives in the steady gaze of an animal that doesn't judge, in the silence shared between species that have learned to trust without contracts, without words, without logic. An ancestral language shaped by centuries of survival and respect. Eli learned it, or perhaps he just remembered it. And since then, he began to hear the whispers of the world more clearly. Every leaf that fell, every mist that appeared at dawn, each breath deeper into dreams. Everything said something. Everything meant something. On a particularly cold night, he left the village silently. No one noticed his absence in the early hours. But when morning came, there were no footprints in the room, no note. Nothing but a drawing left above the bed, a boy walking beside a wolf, merged by the same shadow. Some say he ran away. Others, that he got lost again. Some swear they saw him on the outskirts of the forest with golden eyes and an expression too serene for a human. The truth? It was never made for everyone, only for those who, even without understanding, feel. Because some stories don't exist to prove something, they exist to touch. And when nature decides to whisper in the ear of a chosen one, she doesn't shout. She just watches and waits. Maybe you've heard this whisper too. Perhaps deep down, you feel the echo of that language. If this gave you goosebumps, then don't ignore the call. Sign up now. Because in the shadows of the pack, there are many stories that were not born to be told, but to be felt. And the next one is already looking for you.